good to see you all this morning. So hopefully everyone here submitted their milestone 0 last night. We're going to go through those later today, and we'll try and get back to you by tomorrow. Kind of where we left off yesterday. We've done a lot of the work on all of our front-end files. We've made our HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and we've really made Catbook look like Catbook and have some of the functionality that we want it to have. And we started to interact with the server. We actually got our basic server up and running, and we've also been hitting the actual Catbook API server. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually get our server to give us the front-end files that we've been working on up to this point. And then later today, we're also going to work on getting a database set up using Mongo so that we can store our data even if our server isn't up anymore. So what I'm going to continue to talk about right now is we're going to go over Express. And we're going to use this to basically make routing and giving those files that we want to give the client back a lot easier. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go and get the workshop for today, weblab.2/workshop2. And you can go ahead and clone that repo. We'll give a couple minutes to do that. So, and basically in that repo we'll have all of the files that we've kind of worked on up to this point throughout like our workshops. Does everybody have the repo clone? Is there anyone who hasn't cloned the repo yet? Okay, cool. Alright, so the first thing you should do whenever you clone a repo, and remember we're using Node and NPM, the first thing you should do is NPM install. So this has some of the stuff that we did yesterday. It has the similar package.json, and if you looked in it, you'll see that we do need the HTTP library that we were using yesterday. But because this is a new project, we won't actually have it installed unless we npm install. So what this will do is it'll look at the package.json, see everything it needs, and go get it. So every time that you clone or even pull, it's really good to npm install because if there's a library you need, it can go and get that for you. Okay, I'm going to do that now. npm install. Alright, so what is in our repo right now? So we have our HTML files, the index.html and profile HTML that were for our home page and for our profile page. We have our CSS files that we're giving it all of the special look and feel that we wanted our website to have. We have our front-end JavaScript files, which were the things that were interacting with our DOM elements that we did with Corey yesterday. And then we have the back-end file that is going to be holding our server and the app.js that we did in the mini workshop that we had at the end of yesterday. And so it's good that we have all these files like now in this repo. What we're going to actually go through is we're going to do some housekeeping just to organize our project structure so that it kind of makes a lot of sense. And it will also make it easier for us to use Express because we're going to have everything kind of organized in the right files that we want it to be. So the first thing we're going to do, can we move that slide to, when I move over, people can still read. So what we're going to do first is we're going to make 2 directories in our project folder. We're going to make a source and a public folder. So we can do that. So src is kind of an abbreviated source. And then the other one will be public. Basically, one is going to hold all of the files that we're going to be giving our front end. And one of them is going to, and that's going to be public. And then the source folder is going to hold all of our server code. So now we're going to kind of differentiate between what is our server and what are front-end assets that the user needs to go and get. So what we can do is we can move the CSS folder into public, and we can move the JavaScript folder into public. So now all of our front-end JavaScript and our CSS is in this public folder. we can take our app.js, which if you remember, and we can look at it really quickly, has the little server code that we wrote yesterday, and we're going to put that in our source folder because that's where our server is going to live. And then lastly, what we're going to do is inside our source folder, we're going to make another folder called views, and we're going to move our HTML files into there. So you might be wondering, like, why are we putting our HTML files into our server code if that's front-end stuff that the user is going to be getting? That doesn't make a lot of sense. But the reason for that is because a lot of times when we're working with these HTML files, they're not 100% set. So a lot of times when we load pages, or we'll have like similar pages and the content's not super fixed. So the server might do some stuff to modify the HTML before it sends it. So the client will request it, and the server might make changes and stuff based on what the user is like asking for, and then get it back. And so it's kind of the user asking the server for these files, so the server has them available. If you remember from like Aaron's lecture, kind of the process works is you're going to get the HTML file, and then if you remember, we've added a lot of these links, like our script tags and our style sheet tags have links in them, and basically those links are going to tell it to go back to the server and basically be like, hey, do you have like these public like files for me to get? And that's how it's going to get the CSS and the JavaScript. So basically that's kind of why this is like in the server kind of side and not in the public folder, but we do keep it in a views directory to keep everything, like all of our different like HTML pages, like in the same spot. Okay, and so now that we have that, our structure is kind of all organized. This is kind of the typical structure that when you're using like Node and Express that you'll kind of see in your project. A lot of times you might be doing, if you're working in some other like language or some other technology, it might be set up slightly differently, but this is kind of like when you do Express and Node, like kind of a typical structure that you'll see. All right, so I guess the next thing is what is Express? So I've mentioned it a couple times and I said it's going to make our life easier, but what actually is it? So it is a framework for Node backend code. Basically, it's just like a tool to kind of keep your backend code organized. So like when we do this project structure, we have like a nice compared structure, and what Express is going to let us do is going to let us like easily move, manipulate our files and pass them around and handle a lot of the server logic. So that like if we were going to take the little server that we coded yesterday and make it so that it sent us HTML files, we'd have to do a lot of like little work, a lot of like parsing and actually figuring out what's like where that file is actually living, and it can be kind of complicated. Express is going to give us like a lot of tools that's going to make that a lot easier for us. So what we can do is we can npm install. Can we move this slide forward? But we're going to npm install Express and make sure we save that. And so if we go to our project folder, we can go back to that package.json, and we'll see that we have Express here, and it has a version number for that. And if we open our node modules, we'll see that we have a lot of files now that weren't there before, and these are basically all things that we downloaded specifically for Express, a lot of the libraries and stuff that Express needs to run. And so that's why npm is super easy, because we're like, okay, we just want to use Express, and so we can just npm install it, and it's going to download everything for us, and we don't have to worry about actually like finding everything that we want to use. Okay, here's that. All right, so we're going to now take, the server code that we had yesterday in app.js, and we're going to make some small changes to have it use Express and basically just do the same thing that we ended on yesterday, where it's just returning to us hello world when we loaded the page. So the first thing we're going to do is at the top, we're going to add another import, and this one is going to be Express. So we're going to import Express, and basically we're setting it, and we're just calling it Express, and so this is going to basically give us a means to make our Express app. So then we can basically make an app variable, and we set this equal to Express. So basically when we import Express, we get this function that when we call is going to give us an application object. And so we're just setting it equal to app. So before, when a client like made a request to our server, we basically had this function that was kind of basically, we created a server, we gave it this callback that was sending back hello world. We're going to kind of comment this out. and we're going to kind of make the equivalent for express. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to do app.get, and then basically the first thing it wants is like what endpoint, basically what addition do you want to put to your URL to basically, perform the function that you're giving it, and we're basically going to give it just the slash, and basically the slash just means we're starting directly at like our root, like right at our base, like URL. So we do slash, and then we can pass it in another callback function, and again we give it a request object and a response object. And what we're going to do is we're going to do res.send, and we're going to send hello world. Again. And so what you might notice is that we have this, this time we're using res.send, and we were using res.end before, and it's like, why is this like a different function that we're using? And basically it's because res.send is a function that Express is giving us, and it's basically going to give like a little bit of structure to the response it gives back, so rather than just that text, I'll have like a little bit of HTML, I think. But it's basically just a function that Express gives us, and it does something very, very similar to end, just with a little bit added on top. Okay, and so we can delete this comment the now part. So now we have that. And then what we'll add here is now we have our port before, but now we need to make that server object, because we haven't made it yet, we just have this app object. And so what we'll do is we'll make a variable server, and that's going to be equal to HTTP server of app. So it basically takes that application object, and this function in the HTTP library is going to give us back the server object from that application object. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. And so these are all the changes that we have to do. So we can go to our terminal. You can move the slide one more, so it has that code. And what we'll do is we'll do node, and if you remember now we have to do source app.js, because now it's not just in our project folder in app.js, it's now in the source directory, so we have to make sure we change the path that to get to the file that we actually want to run. So if we run it, we get again that our server is listening on port 3000, and so we can go to Chrome, and we can do localhost 3000, and now we get a hello world back. And if you notice, it's kind of styled a little bit differently than the one from yesterday, and that's because we use res.send instead of res. Alright, cool. So, alright, so basically, now there's one thing that I kind of just want to note. So maybe we decide, right now, as we're working on our server and kind of editing the code, and we have it running, that we don't want it to send hello world anymore. That we actually just, I want to say hello from Zach. And I'm just going to save, and now my file's all saved, and now I expect that when I go to that page, I'm going to get hello from Zach because I changed the file, right? So if I reload, I'll see that it's still saying hello world, and that's not good. The reason for that is because we still have the server running, and even though we changed the files, the server that we ran when we ran this file was using the old version of the app.js that we had. So this isn't good. So what we have to do is we have to Control-C to close the server, and then restart it. And then if we go back to Chrome and load it, we'll get the new message. So, all right. See, that's kind of annoying to do. Because then every single time we make a small change to a file, we have to restart our server. And what if we forget to do it? Maybe we think that we're making our changes and they're just not working, but it's actually we didn't start our server. It can get really annoying, especially as we go through this workshop and we're making a lot of changes to different files, to have to restart our server every time. So, introducing this thing called NoDaemon. Basically, NoDaemon is a library that we're going to install, and basically it's going to help us so that we can run our server code. If we make any changes to our files and save them, it's going to actually just restart our server for us, so we don't have to think about it. So what we can do, yes, annoying, tool, makes our life easier. Alright, so what we can do is we can go back to our terminal, and we can npm install no daemon and save that. And it'll take a minute to download, but it will be helpful. Okay, cool. And then we can do no daemon and then source app.js. So basically, instead of doing node, we call it no daemon, which is basically going to be built on top of node, and basically just make sure that if it sees that we change a file, it will restart for us. So we can actually test that. So if we run it, we get that we can go back and our server is working. We see hello from Zach. And so now if I go in here and I say hello from web staff, and I save, you'll see that my server is restarting here. And so now if I go back and I load my page, everything's changed. So this will be a tool that's super helpful because if you just use Node and don't use Node daemon, it will be pretty annoying to actually know, like, did I restart my server? Is it working? I have to restart it every single time. So trust me, this will make your lives a lot easier. Another thing that we can do, I'm going to show really quickly, if we go into our package.json, one of the things in our package.json is this scripts section. What the script section is going to basically, oh, yep. Yep. Oh, okay, yeah, all right. Can someone help me? All right, so basically we have this scripts section of our package.json, and basically what this is going to let us do, it's going to let us like write our own commands so that we don't have to remember what they are. Because right now our commands to run our server, it's not super big, but you can imagine maybe we have commands to do something else that might be a lot larger, and we don't want to really remember about it. Plus, we might make a command to run. So say I downloaded Node daemon and my teammate didn't know that. And so now I'm starting the server differently. This is going to basically help us kind of write a simple command that you don't need to really remember. So if you go here, we can add another script, and we're going to call it start. And the string we're going to put is no daemon source app.js. And save. And so basically the script is going to let us, basically this is the command that we ran to start our server. We did no daemon source app.js. And so we can go back here, and if I close my server, I can, instead of doing no daemon source app.js, I can do npm and then the start, which is the name of the script the name that we gave to the script. And it's going to run the command no daemon source app.js for me, so I don't have to remember what it is. You could do this and make a bunch of different commands if you want to, if you have, for whatever reason, different ways you want to start your server. And it's also just good for teammates because I don't need to remember what the exact command was to start. Because you remember, even just between yesterday and today, our command changed a little bit. A teammate doesn't even need to know that. They just need to know, oh, if I put npm start, it's going to do what I want it to do. And, okay, now our server's running. Go back. Cool. Go back to the slides. Great. Daemon. And it has the command in the slide, so if you didn't see exactly what it was, it's right there. All right, cool. So now, we can actually use Express to make our server do more complicated stuff than just the stuff that we did yesterday. We can actually get it to send an HTML file. So we're going to go back to our code. I guess, is there any questions at this point? Okay, we can take a minute to get that started. Oh, it doesn't? But shouldn't it be higher than Alright, yeah, okay, so I guess, so the issue that we're having, like, you might be having some issues getting GNOME to start. So the reason for that is because, basically, when, so basically when we downloaded, we did our npm install node daemon, it downloaded it into this project. So we have node daemon in the project, but when you actually go to use it in the command line, so when I went here and I did node daemon source app.js, it's actually checking if I have it just on my computer globally. So apparently I had it installed globally on my computer. So basically, you either need to install it globally through this command, or if you do a script like this, so if we go back in our package.json, if you write a start script like this that has no daemon source app.js, it will do it even if it's not working for you in the command line, because it is in the project, like we see it down here. It's basically like the way to use it in the command line is you have to have it installed globally. So if you're having issues getting it to work, if you write the start script like this and run it, it should work for you. The other alternative is to download it globally, in which case you can run it just no daemon from the command line. So I think we'll take a minute just to make sure that everyone has it working. All right, who doesn't have it working right now? Okay, so we'll take a minute just to get it working. Because we do want to use node daemon just because it's going to make our lives easier. Yeah, and once we kind of everyone has it like set up, we'll continue going through the slide. All right, so we'll move on. All right, so now we have that worked around. So now we have node daemon installed in our project. We have an npm script that we can basically run. So now we can type npm start whenever we want to start up our server. And if we save and do anything like that and change files, it will update for us. Okay? All right, so now going back, what we really want to do is we want to now get our server, instead of just sending a message, hello from WebLab or hello from Zach, we want it to actually send the cat book files that we've been spending all this time working on. So to do this, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into this app.get. So remember, if we go to just that base directory, just do whatever our URL is, it's giving us back this message hello from WebLab staff. So we were using send, which is an express function. So now we're going to change this, and we're going to use a different express function. So we're going to use res.sendFile. And then we're going to put the name of the file. So what we'll do is we'll get back the page for our feed, which is index.html. So we can type that, index.html. And then it will take an optional argument. And what this argument will be, it will basically be, where is this HTML? Basically, we're going to map and say this root. It's a JSON object that's saying, the root is basically saying, where is this located in the project? From the root directory, so from the start of the project code, where do we go to find this? And this will basically be source/views. So basically it's saying to look in the source/views folder, and then it's to look for the index.html file. And so just from doing this change, we have the slides, so basically, from doing this change, if we go back to our local host, oh, I need to start my server. If we go to our local host, we'll see that we're actually getting back the HTML file that we had, that we worked on. And this is great. So Express basically gave us that function, and it made it super easy for us to actually send a file. All we had to do was just call send file and provide the name of it. So what you might notice though is on this index.html file, there's a lot of stuff that's not really right. You might notice that the styling is kind of weird. That like our post, our status like bar is all the way up at the top. It doesn't have like the padding and stuff that we added. Our nav bar doesn't really look right. It doesn't have the buttons that we added. None of our posts are loading. If we like type in and do stuff, it's not working. So like none of our JavaScript's working. And basically that's because we can't actually find the CSS and the JavaScript files that we've been working on. So before, we had our index.html file locally on our computer, and we had the CSS and the JavaScript files right next to it. So when we linked it, it was super easy to find because it was right there on the computer with it. Now, we need to go through the server to be able to actually get the CSS and the JavaScript files that we want to use. You have a question? All right.
But you notice that the web page does still have some design, like,
Yep.
and that's because it's made with Bootstrap, or?
Yep, it's Bootstrap. So if you remember, we had the link from Bootstrap that we could actually go to in the browser, and we could see all the Bootstrap. Remember when Rupmaya did that? So it is able to find some of the CSS that we're using, but only the stuff that was specific to Bootstrap, and not the stuff that was specific to what we wrote. Any other questions? All right, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make changes to our index, to our app and our index.html files so that it will actually be able to find the JavaScript and the CSS that we wrote. So if we go back to our project, remember we put all of those files in the public directory. So in this CSS and in this JavaScript folder, we have those files that we want. What we can add to Express is we can say app.use. Right, the name static, and we do express.static of public. And I'll explain what this command is doing right now. Basically, it's looking in our public folder, and it's basically saying the files in this folder, they're not going to change. They're going to stay the same. They're going to remain static. That's what static means. And basically, we're telling our app to use these files, and what it's going to do is it's basically going to take these public files that we have and basically make it so that people can connect to them and basically get them easily from downloading just by doing a GET request. So we can kind of show that in here. If we go to localhost and we actually go to /static/css/style.css, we can see the CSS file, the file that we had written. It basically was able to get it from our server because because now our app is using it and making it available. And that was basically why we put the name static, was so that it would get it from this static part in the file path. That's basically what that added. Okay? So we can go back. So this is, oh, we have it up on the slide. Okay. All right, cool. But it still isn't going to make it. So if we go back to our local host, it's still not linking, and that's because we have to go back into our index.html file, and we have to change the links so it actually is going to the correct path to actually get those files. So we can do that now. So if we go to our views, and we go to our index.html, what we have to do is we have to find all the places where we linked our files, and we have to change the link that we put so that it's able to find files appropriately. So if you see right here, we have this style sheet. This was our CSS style sheet. What we can add to the link is /static/CSS, styles.css. And then down at the bottom, we have our, so that was up at the top. And then at the bottom, we have our JavaScript files. And so we can add /static/js to that. One cool thing we can do is if you alt-click, and we'll basically make multiple cursors for you since we're typing the same thing, and then we can put /static. But basically, what we want is we want all of our source, all of our scripts to have the static in front of it, and then our CSS style sheet to have static in front of it. Does that make sense to everyone? Yep. Yeah, okay, so basically, when we add that line to our server, to our app.js, we're basically saying, hey, everything that's in this public directory, make it available under the /static from our website. So basically, that's why when we went to the browser, we went to our website, like the localhost 3000, which would be our URL, and we did /static, CSS stuff. We're able to see that CSS file. In these scripts, the way they work, when we add this /, it basically takes the current point you're at. So the reason they worked when we had them locally is because our index.html was in a file, and then when we put, CSS/style, it went from that same point onward and added the CSS style.css. So when we do this /static/JS, that, it's basically going from our website and linking it from static JS, whatever the name was. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, cool. All right, and so now if we go back to our page, if we go back to our page and we load it, we'll see that now I have the CSS that we added, and the JavaScript's working, and it's able to load the post that we had. Cool. All right. Okay. And so the code that we added is in the slides. If you didn't see it or are kind of confused, you can follow along with that. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do really quickly is we're going to kind of basically. Oh yeah.
Why is it under static and not public?
So basically, it's kind of just a standard. I'm pretty sure when we specify the /static, this is basically saying it lives in the /static directory from our file. I'm pretty sure if we change this to public, it will work. I don't know if it's, we can actually try it. So if we change this to public, and we go to public, so it works. So basically that's the name we prescribe to it there. So we could have done public. Actually, I think the reason that it's typically static is just because it signifies that these files aren't changing. So that's what the static keyword is. We could have done public, and it would have worked perfectly fine. But that's basically why, is basically in this command, when we put the /static, it was saying to leave the static directory. Right. Any other questions? Right. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to basically make some changes to the to our app, and we're going to add another URL. So if you remember, if we go back, we have this URL that was basically said that if we go to basically our website and just the /, which means we don't add anything to the end of it, then we're going to get the index.html page. What we're going to do is we're going to add our profile page at the endpoint u/profile, and basically if we go to that part of our website, it will give us our profile page, and then we also want to link the JavaScript and CSS files that we were using in that HTML file. So basically then once we go to our website /profile, we'll get the profile page that we had been working on. So we'll kind of spend a couple minutes and we'll work on that now. If you have any questions, raise your hand and staff will come over and help. And we'll kind of come back together and we'll do it together up here in a few minutes. So I'm going to go through how we can actually add the profile endpoint to our project. So if you see right here, what we were doing before is if you just went directly to the website, you're going to basically get the index.html file, which is going to give you basically our post page. What we can do is we can copy and paste this, and basically we're going to make one for the profile endpoint. So what we're going to add is we're going to add /u/profile. So this will basically say if we go to our website plus this, we're going to call this function, and instead of sending index.html, we're going to send profile.html. So then if we go back, and we go to localhost 3000/u/profile, we get our page. The thing is that until we change the links and stuff, it's not going to add any of our CSS and JavaScript. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Yeah. All right, so we'll keep this up. I think it's also in the slides too. We want to go through, but yeah. So basically, I'll leave this here for a second. But basically now we have our profile page, but we haven't actually gotten, the style sheets and the JavaScript files that we need, so we'll have to go into our profile.html file, and we're gonna want to change those links. So I think I can probably just. Okay, so I'll leave this. I don't know if this is gonna. So basically, we can go here, and we see right here we have our CSS file, so we can add the /static that we had before onto it. And then we can add a /static here, /static here, /static here. And I think I also want to change this back to static because I changed it to public to show that that's what we do. Okay. And so basically, again, what we're doing is we're basically just saying, okay, to get our JavaScript and our CSS files, we have to go to this point in our website. We have to go to our website /static/the name of the link to actually go and link that in. Okay. So now if we go back and we load our profile page, we can see that it's working and it has all the nice CSS stuff that we're getting to do. Okay. Great. So I guess any questions up to this point? Okay. Great. We can continue on. If you are stuck and want to have like the code checkpoint to this point, what you can do is you can reset hard. You'll have to delete your source in your public folders because Git doesn't know what those are yet. So basically, you have to remove them, and then you can check out part 1, and you'll be caught up to this point. Okay. Moving onward. So right now, we made a link for just our base website and for our profile page. Does anyone know what will happen if we try to go to a news page or an about page, things that we haven't actually done yet? Any idea what will happen? Yep.
404?
Yep, we're going to get a 404 error. Or that's, slide stuff. Yep, 404. Basically, these pages haven't been created, there's no actual link to them, and we're going to get an error. Right now, if we did that in our code, we would basically get that it's not found, but we wouldn't have any way to actually, like we haven't done anything to handle it the way we want. So I don't know if you've been to like GitHub's website or a bunch of different websites and you do this where you type in a URL for that website that doesn't actually work, you might get like a fancy page, like you might get like a fancy page that they style, and it might have buttons at the top to basically, okay, go back to your home page. You basically might want to make your own page for if you get a 404 error. But right now we can't do that, so what we're going to do really quickly is we're going to add these two functions. And basically, these are two functions that when we write in our Express app, will basically handle errors for us. And if we have those in, then we'll be able to do what we want with our errors. And basically change these functions so that if we want to make our own error page, we can do that. So we'll add these functions pretty quickly together. I'm going to close this. So that's right here. We can add, can we move forward to the two functions, just so people can see it? Because these are two functions that you don't have to worry about memorizing. It's just important to kind of understand a little bit what's going on. It's going to be the type of thing that you'll put into your app once, and then it's going to kind of just be there. So it's super important to like memorize all the functions and what they're doing, and it's just important to get an idea of what they're actually there for. So we can do app.use. And we're going to add our function. Basically, this function takes a request, a result, and a variable called next. What next is basically going to be, it's going to be like the next function that we want to call on this. The first thing we want to do is create error. Basically, what's going to happen is this function is going to be the function that's called if it wasn't able to find a successful URL or successful route that the person put in. So if we did put the about page, this is the function that's going to be called. And so what we want to do is we want to create an error think it's new, just new error. And we basically say not found, because basically we weren't able to find this. We can do error.status is equal to 404 to basically say that our error had the status code. And then when we do next on error, what this is doing is basically going to be, it's just a function that Express will use to then handle the error that we're creating. So it's not super important to know exactly what it is, but this is basically just code that's going to basically say, okay, we didn't find a route, so now we're going to generate a 404 error. So then, what we can do is add another function, and this will basically be the function that is used when there is an error. So this could be the 404 error that we just created, or it could be a different error if our server just isn't working properly. So we can add an error, a request, a result, and next. And basically, what we're going to do is we're going to basically set the status code of our response. And so the status code of the response will basically be the error status, if it has one, or 500. So basically, if we had the error that we had before, right here, it will have 404, so we'll take it. If it was some different error, then it won't have a status code, so it'll basically be like, all right, I don't have this, so I'm going to take 500 instead in its place. And then what we wanted to do is we want to do res.send, so we're going to send stuff to the user, and we'll basically just do, I think we'll use status is error status code, and message is the error message. Add our semicolons. Yeah, and so this will be the function that will basically handle all of our errors. So the first one basically says, all right, what do we do if they go to a route that doesn't exist? The other one is basically what do we do when we have an error? So if we go back to our page and say we do go to /u/about, a route that we haven't created, we're going to get a 404 with the message not found. And instead of just doing, if you remember, this was the send function we used earlier, we could do a send file and we could send a nice HTML file specifically for errors. Okay. All right. Onward. Does anyone have any questions about this? Yep.
You just go over the high level logic of these two functions, and how many details?
Yeah. So basically we're telling our Express app to use them, and the functions are very specific to basically we're going to get to this function. If we weren't able to use any of the previous functions, we're going to get to this function, we're going to use it. And basically what it's doing is it's going to basically, if we got to here, it means that we weren't able to go to any of our previous points, so we weren't able to find, it wasn't none of the pages that we had created. So that's why this one's called when we weren't able to find a page. And so what we're doing is we're basically making the error. We're making that 404 error that we're going to eventually get back to. When we call next, it's basically going to move on and call this function. So then basically if we had some other error, this function will be called. Or if we got to here, and we're going to use next to be able to call it. So this is basically going to be the function that is called whenever we have an error. And so when we have an error, we're going to set basically we have a response, right, like we've had in the past. We're going to basically set the response status code. So it'll be 404 if it was here because we set it, the error status. Or it's going to be 500, which basically means that our error didn't previously have status code. And then we're basically just sending the status code and the message back. And that's why when we looked at it in the browser, it was just like a JSON object with those two things. Any other questions? All right, so we can continue on. So right now you might be looking in our app.js, you might see that the file's starting to get pretty big, and we've only added 2 pages. As we kind of build like a more complex app and we start to add more pages, it could get a little bit unwieldy and a little bit cluttered. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically take our router logic and we're going to move it into a separate file specifically just for routing for us. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our project folder. We're going to go to this source folder again, and we're going to create a new folder inside of it, and it's going to be called routes. And then inside of routes, we're going to create a new JavaScript file, and it's going to be called views.js. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to move stuff from our app.js into this file, just so that it's separated and we can keep things more tidy and really keep our project structure that we kind of built at the beginning. So we're going to basically improve it again to make it even nicer. Okay. So what we can do is go into app.js, and basically the two gets that we have for our profile and our home directory, we can just copy those, and we can paste them into views. And basically now we're going to need to import a couple things to basically get this to work. So we can import, we need to import Express again, so we can do require Express. Actually, I think that's all we have to import. But what we're going to do is we're going to also create a variable, and we're going to call router, and this will be equal to express router. And basically Express is giving us a function to create a router, and this router is basically going to be the part of our app, so just extremely specifically handling the different endpoints that we have. So what we can do is we can change app to be router. And so basically now what we're saying is instead of our app handling these things, the router's going to handle it. And what we can do is we can add at the end module.exports. And basically, what this is basically saying is that if somewhere else in the project, so remember whenever we've been importing files, we've been getting like something back to use. If we import this views.js file, we're going to basically be getting our router back. So so what we can do is in a different part of our project, namely in like our app.js file, we can import this views file, and we're going to get this router that we can reincorporate back into our app. So now all of our routes can be handled in this part of the project, and we don't have to worry about handling them in everything in app.js. Because as we add more and more routes, like you can imagine even this file could get pretty big, and we don't want to clutter our main app up with this. Because that's also going to have extra, additional stuff. Is everyone good up to here? Is there any questions on this file and what's going on in here? Okay. So now we can go back to our app. And what we can do is we can add a new variable, and we're going to call it views. And what we'll do is basically import from our routes/views. And basically, this is going to get that router object that we just created. And then, so now we have that available to use for us. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to reincorporate that in. So before, remember we have these two things that we just moved into our router. We no longer need them because they are now in our router, so we can either delete them or comment them out. And in their place, we can put app.use at the / directory. We can add our views router. And basically what this is going to say is if you go to our website, we're going to use this router to handle all of the requests. So basically what this let us do is we can move our routing logic into a different folder, and that way it doesn't have to clutter up here. What we can also do if we are making a really, really complicated app is we could actually make more than one router and incorporate the routers at different points in our website. Basically, the whole idea of doing this is that we just want to take the logic that's handling our routes and kind of move it separately so that all of this stuff is kind of like in its own little bubble. And we can kind of reason about it in its own little bubble. Now what we can do is we can go back. Our server should still be running. So we should be good to go to localhost. And we can go to our home page. and now it's working with a router. We have a nice little feature. All right. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? Okay. So this is just more explanation. So basically what that modules.export was doing is saying that this is the thing that if we imported this file, we're going to get. So we would get the router that we created. And this was just what we did to bring it back. And that is it for this. So I know that there's like a lot going on when we're doing this. A lot of things that we added, a lot of new stuff, and it's not super clear what all of it is doing. I hope that like kind of as we went through it, like it kind of made sense at least what our app is doing and how the server actually kind of works. That like we're going to these particular endpoints, and what we're doing is we're sending back specific files. A lot of the code that's in here, you know, it can really be like reused in your apps to basically handle routing. So basically, even if you're still like a little bit confused about what was going on during this like workshop, if you take a look over the code and you can go over with it with staff, we can kind of try and clarify a lot of the stuff. But this is basically like the general logic that you're going to want to like use to handle your server. And basically, now we're kind of at this point where all of the pieces have kind of been put together, where we have like all of our front end files, and now our server is actually giving it to them. If you remember, like what we did yesterday is people were able to like even connect to my computer to be able to get a message. Now we kind of have a thing that we can run on a different computer somewhere else, so that we can actually go and get all of the files that we've been working on. So really, all the pieces are starting to come together about how Catbook is going to be set up. So kind of what we have to do moving forward is we still don't have like all of the data that we're using in Catbook is kind of fixed. A lot of the ways in which we get that when we're going to our stories part, we're getting our stories and getting our comments like we did yesterday. We're using the fully completed Catbook, not the version that we're working on. So what we're going to do in the later workshops today is basically work on them to basically basically store the data that we're creating. So when we make posts, store all of that somewhere so that when people go and access our server, they're able to get that. So that's what the Mongo and the database workshops are going to add to this project. So yeah, again, if you have any questions on this code, because some of it can be a little bit complicated, it can be a little bit like black magic-y about like what some of this stuff is doing. A lot of the stuff is just stuff that you're going to put into your project once and you're going to use. And if you want more clarification again and you want us to go over it again, just please reach out to some of the staff members and we can do that. And there's office hours. If you go, you'll see Alex Chen because he goes to all the office hours. And if you want to see the fully completed code for this, what you can do is you can reset hard. Make sure you delete your routes. Also delete the source and the public folders if those aren't gone. And then you can check out the completed version. All right. Thank you, guys.